everybody, it's Ani. I'm at Kolkata Chai and I'm super excited today. I am with Pooja Bavishi from Malai Ice Cream. Pooja, please introduce yourself. Let people know what you do.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I'm the founder and CEO of Malai. We are a South Asian inspired ice cream brand.
And you guys are tasty and amazing.
Yeah, we're tasty and amazing.
That's what I have to throw in there.
Yeah.
Let's get into the questions, shall we? I want to know, what's one dish that kind of defined your childhood?
My family's Gujarati,
Okay.
and really homey Gujarati food is my comfort food. Like the food that you cannot find in restaurants, like all of that.
Yep.
So there's a millet bread called rotla, and my mom used to roast it and then put yogurt on it and let it sit for like an hour, and it would seep into the bread.
Never heard
Like
of
my
this.
mouth is watering just talking about it. And like I always say that like you put like a little bit of heavy cream on it, which, you know, foreshadowing Malai, I guess. But it's so simple, and it would absolutely, that is like my favorite childhood meal, and it would be my last meal.
Do you still make it like on your own? Is it a thing?
Oh, I cannot make it on my own, but my mom still makes a mean rolla.
I love that. Shout out to mom.
Yeah, totally.
How would you describe the cuisine, the food that you ate growing up?
Yeah.
In 3 words.
Very varied food. You know, I grew up in North Carolina,
Mm-hmm.
and so, you know, like I you know, that meal that I just talked about, I loved it, but there were so many other, like there's so many other very traditional Indian cuisines, foods that I just didn't appreciate growing up.
Same.
And so you have this appreciation once you get older, right? Because that's what you grew up with, that's what's familiar to you. But I, you know, my parents in general were like very into trying new things and very into traveling and making us like see the world.
Yeah.
And so like we were always like, our nights out, dinners out would be at Thai restaurants and pizza and Mexican, and you know, like we would always try something new.
Yep.
And so, and my mom really enjoyed making that stuff at home too. So it would be like Indian 2 nights a week, and then, you know, we would always have pizza Fridays. And yeah, exactly. But everything would have like a little bit of an Indian spin. So like
Interesting.
tacos would be on puris instead of taco shells, and like delicious.
I've never heard of that.
It is so good. You need to try it.
Ooh,
Yeah,
tacos.
yeah.
What have I been doing? Speaking of your parents, did they have like a food myth that they tried to put on you? Like, if you eat this, this will happen? What
Oh
was
my
that
God,
for you?
superstitions, yeah, of course, 100%. But I don't, like, I actually don't remember any of them. I remember hearing about them growing up,
Okay.
but I don't really remember any of them except for, you know, the prasad that you have after temple. And so, like,
Fair.
which is always the best, too. It's always so delicious, and so I'm very pleased to have that.
I love that. You mentioned travel a little bit.
Yeah.
I want to know, what's like one dish or one item that you had in your travels
Yeah.
that blew your mind?
Whenever we went to India, we didn't get to travel that much. We would just see family
Same.
and stay there. And India is such a diverse, beautiful country. And there was the first time we traveled outside of Ahmedabad and like really saw everything. Was my family went for a family wedding, like the 4 of us. I have an older sister, went for a family wedding, and then we took 2 weeks and drove around Rajasthan. And it was just like, it was so different. It was so different than anything I had experienced before in India. And like the culture was like so distinct and rich, and the food was so different. And I remember the hotel setting up a plate of dal bati. And like I had had it before, but it was an unbelievable experience. It was like 10 years ago now, and I still think about that dal bati. It's just like, it was this like, I had never experienced Indian food like that before, in its own like cultural context as well, like where it was supposed to be from. Man, it was pretty special.
I love that. Now I'm like starving and I'm not fair. What's your favorite food city? Like, what place?
Food city, New York City.
Really?
Yeah, I think that there's really great food here. There's also really good driving distance food, right? So like Philadelphia is like 2 hours away, and that's a really,
Philly's a
really
gem.
great,
Hidden gem.
it's a really great food city.
Yes.
And then like there's really good food in New Jersey, which people don't know about.
Another gem.
Yeah, and like, you know, DC's I think it's situated well to eat well.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Say no more.
Yeah.
Tell me about your like food algorithm. How do you get to like pick when you gotta pick a new place to eat?
Yeah.
What goes into that?
Yeah,
Real
great
quick.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah, and not quick at all is the thing. I always have this like running list of like food places that I want to try. And then if I see anything like on Instagram, on an ad, whatever, like I add it to the list.
Yep.
Whenever I see, like, I think like Instagram is the best way. Like whenever I see people's stories or posts about food, it's like an immediate recommendation to me, right? So I always screenshot that.
Fair. I love that.
Then I read about them. I read about the restaurant. I read about like what they offer, the menus I know inside and out, and then I plan my trip over there.
Yeah, you need to be like my food consultant. Let's talk about Malai.
Okay.
So tell me more about the name. How did you come to it, and what does it mean?
You know, I actually don't remember a time when I hadn't named the business Malai. Like in my mind, like I knew that I wanted to start this like South Asian inspired ice cream business, and in my mind it was always called Malai.
Okay.
I think Malai is like the feeling you get when you hear Malai. It is like this like soft, comforting feeling, and also like it's like to me it just sounds delicious.
Agreed.
And so in my mind it was always just called Malai, and like I love like the figurative meaning of it, which is like, you know, the best of something, cream of the crop.
Yep.
And so I just thought it was really appropriate.
I love that. I got 3 more questions for you.
Okay.
So being a food entrepreneur, how has that brought you closer to your culture? Obviously, I think we share like a similarity in terms of taking tradition and kind of like modernizing it in a way, and pushing it forward, if you will, while also respecting, you know, all of the lineage that comes from it. But I'm curious, how do you feel like you've gotten closer to your culture since then?
I love that question. I have always been really nostalgic for my heritage and my culture. Like I said, I grew up in North Carolina, and it wasn't, you know, I went to a private high school. I was, you know, one of 2 Indian kids in my class.
Wow, okay.
And I always had this longing for like my parents' childhood in India. I felt like a little bit like I missed out. And so I went through, you know, the motions of everything, and like, you know, I have multiple interests, and I pursued a career in public policy and all of this stuff, right? And continued with my career. But I always said I wanted a food business. And I never really knew what that looked like. I just knew I wanted a dessert business. And in my mind, the desserts were like cookies and pastries and like and things like that. And when I made ice cream for the first time, it happened to be that I spiced it with Indian flavors. And, you know, like I think, you know, looking back at it, I was dying to tell my story. Like I had lived all of these years being so curious about my culture, wanting to live that culture, almost feeling jealous that I didn't get to live that culture that my parents got to experience on a daily basis. And it's a way for me to experience it on a daily basis. I get to tell my stories, and it's distinctly mine, right? Like it is an Indian American culture. It's not, I did not grow up in India, but this is distinctly my perspective, and I love that I get to showcase that I'm this hybrid creature, and I get to live that every day.
That's so layered and rich, no pun intended. I had to get that in there. What's the biggest misconception about Malai that you think the general public has?
That we are an Indian ice cream brand. And so like we are, right? Like I think that like very simply put, we are, but we're not just an Indian ice cream brand, right? Like we are ice cream, right? And I want people to know that we are in a bigger category than this, right? Like it doesn't have to be that just because we have rose and cardamom flavored ice creams, we're Indian ice cream. These can be mainstream flavors, and they should be, in fact. And so why aren't we just an ice cream shop?
I love that. It's like the need to normalize these things that are like huge already.
Yeah.
Last question for you. What's the one thing that you guys do at Malai better than anybody else?
We'll make ice cream. But really, like I love the stories that we tell. I love the experience that people get generally at Malai. Like I do really, and this is how you have to be as an entrepreneur. I really do believe that we have the best ice cream out there. And like I said, you just have to believe that to really live your product and live your business. But I also think that like the experience that we give, the quote unquote education that we give people, like I love that people find out what cardamom is at Malai or what jaggery is at Malai. I think that we're playing an important role in making these flavors mainstream.
It's like a portal for education and cultural like awareness.
For sure.
Amazing. Pooja from Malai Ice Cream, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's such a pleasure to have you.
Likewise.
And everyone, you guys know where to go. What's the website real quick for everyone?
Malai.co.
That's all I gotta say.